Welcome to Tony Tremble, your source for self-aware horror stories. Airbnb's been under a lot of flack lately. I wouldn't say these stories help. Don't go to the attic. I just love the feeling when I get to a new Airbnb. I still do, even after what happened that time. It's always an adventure, a mixture of adrenaline and comfort. On one hand, you're off the road and ready to relax, and on the other, you're in a new place, full of things to discover. Well, I was hoping to discover hidden wonders and not pull the curtain on horror as I did. If you've been exposed to terror, you'll know that it will haunt you after it happened. I still see the sweat on his back and the shivering of his shoulders in the darkness every time I put my face to the pillow at night. But let's rewind a little, because things started very well. It was a nice, alpine-shaped building. The tiles on the roof met yellow flowers on both sides, while the blue sky occupied the rest of the landscape. The mountains in the back were even more than I was expecting for the price. I walked to the door, dropped my backpack on the floor, and rang the bell. A man greeted me with a smile, letting me into the house. "Hey, I'm Mark, the owner. How was your trip? Let me show you around," he said with a broad smile. And I told him it had been a bumpy road, but my truck had proven its worth. We talked casually for a little while, and then he left. I was glad he had greeted me and thanked him for his warmth. The view from the living room was breathtaking. I was to spend 3 days there. I needed to finish my thesis. I was studying for a doctorate in astrophysics. I wanted 3 or 4 days away from everything to do the final corrections on formulas and gravitational fields. I couldn't think of a better way to perfect my thesis about the universe than seeing the wonders in it. Overlooking something as beautiful as the meadow leading to the mountains and the blue sky filled me with joy and gave me a nice push. I set up the desk, made some fresh coffee, and sat down to work right away. I remember the smell of the mug flooding the room and the whirling smoke going up the wooden ceiling above me. At nightfall, Mark knocked on my door with a six-pack in his hand. He said, "Hey man, would you like to take a break and share a beer?" He took me by surprise, but I was ready to stop thinking about planets and orbits and enjoy some human contact. When you work with universal distances and time frames, going back to a healthy down-to-earth exchange feels great. We sat down and opened the first couple of beers. He told me he was a contractor and that he'd been working on several properties around. We opened the second beer and I talked about my project and the relationship I had with the universe. I tried my best to explain my thesis in layman's terms and he nodded the whole way. A couple hours went by and we ran out of beer. He insisted on going and buying more so we could keep talking. I felt comfortable and he made me feel like a friend. We came back inside, took our places again, and he excused himself to go to the bathroom. I took that break from conversation to check my phone, and what I found left me puzzled. Fear is a feeling that can grow just as much as love can. Well, the message I received was the seed of terror. It was a message from the Airbnb owner saying, "Hey, did you make it okay? I hope Peter showed you around." I remember the rush of adrenaline going up from the bottom of my spine all the way to the base of my head. Immediately, my body got rigid. I answered, "Hey, I made it okay, but it was Mark who showed me around." As I raised my eyes from the phone, Mark came walking from the bathroom sporting a smile on his face. My phone vibrated again. It was the owner. "No, I don't know who Mark is. The landlord's name is Peter, and he's not answering the phone. I'm on my way over." My expression might have changed because Mark's smile disappeared as well. He asked me if everything was okay, and I said, "Yes," casually asking about Peter. I said his name was on the email as the landlord. Mark smiled and said, "Yes, I gave Peter the day off. He's not going to be in for the entire week, actually." The email didn't say anything about Peter. It was official. Mark was lying. But I didn't want him to know that I knew. I swallowed saliva and felt my arms going stiff. My body was going into emergency mode. "I think I should go back to work, man," I said, trying to fake a smile. He smiled back and said, "Of course. I'm here with beers, and you have a doctorate to obtain." He got up and walked through the living room all the way to the door. When he put his hand on the latch, he turned around and said, "If you want to have a nice night, I think you should avoid the attic. Rodents, man. Lots of rodents. Telling a scientist like me to avoid searching for something is a call to do it." I locked the door waiting for the owner and went up to the attic. I walked the little stairway leading up slowly and was faced with a red curtain. I fearfully moved it with my right hand, and it revealed Peter, the landlord, tied up and facing the wall. Right at that moment, I heard noises behind me. The stairway creaked, and Mark grabbed my leg. "I told you not to come up here," he said with the same smile he had the entire afternoon. Mark grabbed something from the back of his belt, and I took advantage of that moment to push him with my leg. Peter's hands were tied down, but within my reach, so I started untying them. Mark grabbed my leg again and used a rope to tie my feet. In the meantime, I set Peter free, and he turned around, throwing his entire body down the stairs and taking Mark with him all the way to the floor. I took advantage of that confusion and ran away, all the way to my truck parked outside. The last thing I saw was Peter and Mark fighting on the floor. I sat down behind the wheel and realized I couldn't leave. My life's work was on that table. I dialed 911, wished for the best, and ran back into the Airbnb to look for my thesis. Mark was over Peter, hitting him with a closed fist. Shivering and fearful, I grabbed a chair and broke it over Mark's back. When the real owner arrived with the police, Peter and Mark were both unconscious inside. I was outside with the keys in my hand after locking the door. It turns out that Mark and Peter were drinking buddies who would often use the empty Airbnb property to have fun and some beers. The day before, Mark got Peter drunk, tied him up, and robbed him, as well as the keys to the property. I guess he needed to pay for gambling debts. My arrival made Mark think he could rob me as well and raise more money. He was trying to get me drunk as he did with Peter, but one message transformed everything. Oh, and despite that, I stayed. You can call me a doctor now. My thesis went great. The party of the year. Beachside Airbnbs are the best option if you want to have a wild weekend with your friends. That was our initial intention. My friend Molly was getting married, and it was the event of the year for us. We were in our early 20s back then, and Molly was the first one to say yes in front of the judge. We booked this huge house with an infinity pool overlooking the beachside. I can't even begin to tell you just how amazing the sunset looked from the barbecue area. It's weird how thin the line between a dream and a nightmare can be. What started as the best plan in our lives ended up as the most difficult experience I ever had to endure. It turned into trauma. I got there first. I was the only one in my group of friends who didn't work a 9-to-5 job, so I was in charge of preparing everything for the night. That meant I was spending my first night in that huge house all by myself, which got me scared and excited in equal parts. I mean, spending the night alone in such a big house with that many glass doors wasn't exactly relaxing, but I felt like a millionaire enjoying the lifestyle. After I bought all the booze, the food, and ornaments, I decided I was going to open a Corona and watch the sun go down over the ocean while I chilled on the big sofa. I was exhausted and happy. Dusk gave way to the night, and what was ochre went fully black. The calm of the summer breeze moved my hair gently. I got up from the couch and touched the swimming pool with my foot to check on the water temperature. There was a jacuzzi on one side as well, so I decided to take a swim and then relax with hot bubbles before going to sleep. I remember I was reading Chuck Palahniuk's rant at the moment and had Tame Impala blasting on the stereo inside the house, so I could hear it from where I was. I had been in several shops downtown running errands and told one of the clerks, a really cute one that was eyeing me all the time, all about the party. I was silly enough to tell him I was spending the first night there on my own too, though. Me, my big mouth, and my excitement weren't the best combination. As I sat down inside the jacuzzi, I heard my phone vibrating. It was an unknown number, I didn't pick it up. I never do unless I know who's calling. I received a message and opened it up to find out it was the clerk from the last shop claiming he had a present to deliver for such a big purchase. Put a smile on my face, so I replied, I love freebies, I still do. But as I would find out later, that message was very far from being good news. The doorbell rang. I peeped through the window. There was a van parked outside. 3 guys came off. They were holding a big box that was supposed to be the store's present. The cute clerk was not among them, which was a bummer. They said it was a present for the bride, so I didn't have to open it. They stressed it so much that, despite my curiosity, I obeyed. Another big mistake on my side. I drank another 3 Corona beers and decided to call it a night quite early. The big party was happening the next day, and I wanted to be fully awake and fresh to enjoy it. Little did I know about what the night had for me. An hour must have gone by when I heard some noise on the bottom floor. I was in bed upstairs falling asleep while How I Met Your Mother played on the TV. I thought it was just the wind and the huge glass windows moving, but then I heard another noise and I got out of bed. I grabbed my hockey stick and went down the stairs with it, walking slowly. When I reached the ground, there was a man standing next to the open box. He didn't have a shirt. He looked at me and said, "Hello again, gorgeous. Do you remember me? I came to have some fun. I saw the way that you looked at me in the shop. I'm your present. What do you think?" To say I got very scared would be an understatement. I freaked out, panicked, and screamed as loud as I could for him to leave immediately. Instead, he came closer and said, "Come on, I know you want me. Aren't you planning on a party? Why don't we get it started before your girlfriends come? Just you and me, come on." I raised the hockey stick and tried to hit him, but he avoided my swings, laughing and walking forward. With his right hand, he grabbed the stick and threw it away. I stumbled on the couch and fell on the floor, still moving out. The windows were locked and I didn't have the keys on me. I was trapped. He grabbed both my hands with his and slapped me. "You want to put up a fight?" I love it when they fight back. He slapped me again and I fell to the floor. He said, "Come on, get up, fight me back. I like it rough." I closed my fists and my eyes and tried to hit him with my hands, my legs, or anything that could hurt him, but I was down to the floor again in less than a minute. His laughter is something I will never forget. Just when he had taken off his belt and was about to unbutton his jeans, the sirens of a police car showed up through the windows. The Airbnb was connected to a real-time camera security system. They followed up on the entire sequence and arrived in the nick of time. He went to jail for sexual assault and trespassing on private property. Well, I'm glad they got that bastard. I don't know how many other women he hurt. As for myself, I took courses on self-defense and eventually ended up teaching it to other women. Trauma has a way of sticking around, but there's things we can do to fight back. An inverted cross. When something is too good to be true, you have to come down to earth and realize you're living a fantasy. This Airbnb I'm going to tell you all about had red flags all over since the first moment, but I didn't see any of them. I was blind. I wanted to believe I'd found the perfect spot. It turned out I had walked into a trap that almost took me to the dark side. I still carry their mark with me. As I said, it was the perfect deal. I had been looking for a quiet place to spend a week in San Diego for ages. The thing is, any destination as stunningly beautiful as that is also astronomically expensive. Nevertheless, I kept on looking until one day the perfect house appeared at the perfect price. It was a house with an ocean view for a steal of a price for the entire week. I didn't doubt it. I booked it without even reading the comments or noticing it had 2 stars out of 10. Yeah, that's on me. The comments said the truth about that place, revealed its dark secret, but I never read them. I wanted that Airbnb experience, and I was going to get it. Well, reputation was red flag number 1. I arrived at the property and entered the code to get into one of the most beautiful places I had ever been. The white and blue interior matched the exterior and the overall theme perfectly. There were puffy couches, ocean paintings, a big kitchen, and a fantastic barbecue deck. From there, you could go into the ocean by just walking a few meters. The back door had no lock, nor did the windows. That was red flag number 2. I was next to the ocean, but inside a house that was completely unsafe. That night, though, the danger wasn't coming from the outside. I went through the papers indicating what to do with the home appliances, the overall house rules, and found a disturbing notice by the end of the paper saying, "Don't pay attention to sounds you might hear at night. The hot water pump is noisy. If you do hear them, lock yourself and wait a couple of hours. The access to the basement is off limits." Okay, yeah, that was red flag number 3. I came back from the ocean after swimming and surfing for a while and sat down to enjoy the view with a drink and a snack as the sunset came along. It was a magical experience, just as I thought it would be. The Airbnb turned out to be the perfect spot I'd been seeking for months. So I thought until I got up to fix a crooked painting on the wall. My OCD was stronger than my will to chill. Upon moving it, though, I noticed a suspicious black stain on the white wall. I removed the painting entirely and found the face of a demon painted on the wall with black ink. Above him, there was an inverted cross. That was definitely red flag number 4. I just thought it was the previous owners who had, the worst taste in decoration, but that was far from being the real explanation for the devil drawing. I repositioned the painting and started cooking dinner. I sat down to eat and noticed the lights in the living room were flickering. "That's odd," I said out loud even though I was alone. Suddenly, after flickering some more, the lights went off. Far from being discouraged by this, I remember thinking, "That's a sign I have to go to bed." I finished eating and left everything as it was inside the sink and headed towards the bedroom, carrying the tiredness from an afternoon spent chasing waves. I woke up at midnight to the noises in the living room. I tried to fall asleep again, but they were impossible to ignore. The paper said I should lock myself in, but I wanted to know what's going on. When I reached the main area, I noticed a soft rumble underneath my feet. I could also hear voices singing something. It was like a mantra. The table was in the middle of the room and over a carpet. I turned on the lights and saw the same ink I had seen on the wall, but on the floor. I moved the table and the carpet, and to my horror, I found a circle with an inverted cross in the middle. I jumped back and fell to the ground. The ceiling had the same symbol, I just hadn't seen it before. I guess those were red flags 5 and 6. Yep, I had booked an Airbnb from a Satanist cult. I ran to the bedroom to gather all my clothes, and when I made it back to the living room, I found a group of people dressed in red robes chanting. They were carrying candles, and the leader looked me in the eye. He said, "Are you ready to die for our Lord Satan?" I was paralyzed by fear, thinking that was it. I was going to die in the hands of Satan and then be tossed into the ocean or something. The next thing I saw was a handkerchief that smelled weird, and then the ceiling. I woke up the next morning, curled on the floor. The place was clean and full of natural light. The ocean roared in the distance. I was dazed and confused. Was it all a dream? I don't remember running any faster my entire life as I did when I discovered the little inverted cross tattoo I still have on my forearm. If I had followed the red flags from the get-go, nothing would have happened. I guess I was living a fantasy. I thought my dream Airbnb experience was going to be something I would never forget. I guess I was right.